Dr. Jae-ho Kim stood at the window of his office, watching the morning sun rise over the rice fields. He had worked at the Agricultural Research Center for 10 years, but today felt different. Today he would meet his first alien. The phone rang. "Dr. Kim, the shuttle has landed," said the voice on the other end. "Ambassador Velthara is ready to meet you." Jae-ho walked to the landing pad. The alien shuttle looked like a silver egg sitting on metal legs. A door opened with a soft hiss and Ambassador Velthara stepped out. The alien was tall and thin, with pale blue skin that seemed to glow softly. Its head was larger than a human's, with big dark eyes that took up most of its face. Small patches of light moved across its skin like tiny stars. "Dr. Kim." Velthara spoke in perfect Korean, though its voice sounded like music. "I am here to study your primitive food growing methods. My people are curious about how your species manages to feed itself without proper technology." Jae-ho smiled. He had been warned that the Catherians thought humans were backward. "Welcome to Earth, Ambassador. I think you might be surprised by what you learn here." They walked into the main building. Velthara carried a small device that made soft beeping sounds as it scanned everything around them. The alien's light patches flickered faster when it saw something new. "Your building materials are very basic," Velthara said, touching the wall. "Wood and metal. We build everything from synthesized materials that last forever." "These materials work well for us," Jae-ho said. "They came from living things, so they understand life better than synthetic materials." Velthara's lights blinked in what Jae-ho thought might be confusion. "Materials cannot understand anything. They are not alive." They entered the main laboratory where Dr. So-min Park was working. She looked up from her microscope and smiled. "You must be our visitor from the stars." "I am Ambassador Velthara of the Catherian Collective," the alien said formally.
"I am here to document your species' attempts at food production," So-min laughed.
"Attempts? Come, let me show you something." She led them to a display case filled with different types of rice. Each sample looked different. Some were short and fat, others long and thin. Some were white, others brown or even black. "This is rice," So-min explained. "Humans have been growing it for 10,000 years. Each type is different because we made them different." Velthara's scanner beeped rapidly. "You made them different? How? Do you have genetic modification equipment?" "Not the kind you're thinking of," So-min said. "We used selection. Every year, farmers choose the best plants to grow seeds for the next year. After many years, the plants become exactly what we want." The alien's lights flickered rapidly. "This is impossible. Genetic changes take thousands of years to occur naturally." "Not if you guide them," Jae-ho said. "Watch this." He picked up 2 samples of rice. One had small grains, the other had large grains. A farmer long ago noticed that some rice plants had bigger grains. He saved seeds from those plants and threw away the small ones. His children did the same thing. After many generations, all the rice had big grains. Velthara scanned both samples. Its device made excited chirping sounds. "The genetic differences are significant, but this should have taken millennia to achieve." "It took about 50 years," So-min said casually. The alien went very still. Its light stopped moving. 50 years? "My people have been trying to improve our food sources for 3,000 years with advanced technology. We have made very little progress." So-min showed them more rice varieties. "This one grows in water. This one grows in dry soil. This one can survive cold weather. This one produces 3 times more food than the original wild rice." "Each one was made by farmers choosing the best plants year after year," Jae-ho added. "No advanced technology needed. Just patience and observation." Velthara's scanner was beeping so fast it sounded like an alarm. "How did you know which changes to make? Did you map the genetic sequences?" "Farmers just looked at the plants," So-min said. "They knew which ones were healthier, which ones produced more food, which ones survived bad weather better. They didn't need to understand genetics. They understood life." The alien sat down heavily in a chair. Its lights dimmed. "My people synthesize all our food in laboratories. We have tried for centuries to create better nutrition sources, but they are always inferior to what we find in nature. We thought it was because we needed bigger laboratories and more powerful computers. Sometimes the old ways work better than new technology," Jae-ho said gently. Velthara looked around the laboratory with new eyes. The equipment was simple compared to Catherian technology, but the results were impressive. "You said this rice produces 3 times more food than the original plant?" "That's just the beginning," So-min said. "Come, let me show you what we've done with wheat." She led them to another display. The wheat samples ranged from tiny wild grains to large plump kernels that looked completely different from their ancestors. Wild wheat has hard shells that are difficult to remove, So-Min explained. Early farmers chose plants where the shells came off easily. They also chose plants with bigger grains and stronger stalks that didn't fall over in the wind. Velthera scanned the wheat samples. The nutritional content is significantly higher than the wild variety, and it's easier to grow and harvest, Jeho added. One field of modern wheat can feed 100 people for a year. The same field of wild wheat would barely feed 10 people. The alien's lights began moving again, but slowly, like it was thinking hard. Your species achieved this level of improvement without understanding the underlying genetic mechanisms. Our ancestors didn't know about genes, So-Min said, but they knew about life. They watched their plants carefully. They learned what made them grow better. They passed that knowledge to their children. For 10,000 years, Jeho added, each generation built on what the previous generation learned. Velthara stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the rice fields stretched to the horizon, green and healthy under the morning sun. My people lost the ability to observe life when we became dependent on technology. We forgot how to be patient. It's never too late to learn, Jeho said. The alien turned back to them. Its lights were brighter now, pulsing with what looked like excitement. Would you teach me? I want to understand how humans learn to work with life instead of trying to control it. So-Min smiled. Of course. But learning about plant breeding is only the beginning. Wait until you see what we've done with animals. Velthara's lights flashed so brightly that both humans had to look away. There is more? Much more, Jeho said. Tomorrow we'll visit a real farm. You'll meet Taewook Lee. He's been breeding cattle for 30 years. His family has been doing it for 3 generations. The ambassador's scanner fell silent as Velthara forgot to use it, too amazed by what it was learning. For the first time in centuries, a Kitherian was discovering that sometimes the simplest solutions were the most powerful ones. The next morning, Jeho drove Velthara to Taewook Lee's farm in the countryside. The alien sat quietly in the passenger seat, watching the landscape change from city buildings to green fields and mountains. How far is this farm? Velthara asked. About an hour, Jeho replied. Taewook's family has owned this land for over 100 years. His grandfather started breeding cattle here. His father continued the work, and now Taewook is making them even better. Velthara's lights pulsed slowly. 3 generations working on the same project? My people rarely work on anything for more than a few years before moving to new technology. They turned down a dirt road lined with trees. Soon they could see a large farmhouse with several barns nearby. Cattle grazed peacefully in green pastures that stretched up the hillsides. Taewook Lee came out to meet them. He was a strong man in his 40s with rough hands and a warm smile. He wore simple work clothes and boots covered in mud. Dr. Kim, Taewook called out. And you must be our visitor from space. Welcome to my farm. Velthara stepped out of the car carefully. The alien seemed nervous around the wide open spaces and the sounds of animals in the distance. I am Ambassador Velthara. I am here to study your animal breeding methods. Well, you've come to the right place, Taewook said. Let me show you around. But first, let me ask you something. Do your people raise animals for food? We create synthetic proteins in laboratories, Velthara replied. We stopped raising animals thousands of years ago when we developed better technology. Taewook looked surprised. Better technology? Come, let me show you something. He led them to a pasture where about 20 cattle were grazing. The animals were large and healthy, with thick muscles and shiny coats. They looked calm and content. These are Korean beef cattle, Taewook explained. My grandfather started with just 2 animals. Look at them now. Velthara pointed its scanner at the nearest cow. The device beeped rapidly. The muscle density is remarkable. The fat distribution is optimal. How did you achieve this level of physical perfection? The same way your friends achieved it with their rice, Taewook said. Selection. Every year I choose the best bull and the best cows to have babies. I look for animals that are healthy, strong, and produce good meat. The alien walked closer to the fence. One of the cows came over and sniffed at Velthara curiously. The ambassador jumped back. Don't worry, Taewook laughed. She's just curious about you too. Her name is Beauty. She's one of my best mothers. Mothers? Velthara asked. Female cows have babies, Jeho explained. The babies grow up to become the next generation of cattle. Taewok chooses which animals get to have babies based on their qualities. Velthara scanned Beauty carefully. Her genetic markers indicate excellent health and high-quality protein production. But how did you know she would be superior before seeing her offspring? Experience, Taewok said simply. My father taught me how to look at an animal and see its potential. His father taught him the same thing. You learn to see which animals are naturally stronger, healthier, and more productive. They walked to another pasture where younger cattle were grazing. These animals looked different from the first group. They were smaller but still healthy and strong. These are the children and grandchildren of Beauty and my best bull, Thunder, Taewok explained. Each generation gets a little better than the last. Velthara's lights flickered rapidly. You are selectively breeding for desired traits across multiple generations. But this process would take decades to show significant results. My grandfather started this line 70 years ago, Taewok said. My father continued it for 40 years. I've been working on it for 20 years. In 10 more years, I'll teach my son everything I know and he'll make them even better. The alien went very quiet. Its lights dimmed to almost nothing. 70 years of continuous improvement. My people would have given up and tried a completely different approach after 5 years. Good things take time, Taewok said. You can't rush nature. You have to work with it. Be patient and trust the process. They walked to the pig barn next. Inside, dozens of pigs were living in clean, comfortable pens. The animals looked healthy and happy with clean pink skin and bright eyes. Pigs are different from cattle, Taewok explained. They have babies faster so you can see results quicker. But the principle is the same. Choose the best parents to create the next generation. Velthara scanned several pigs. The genetic diversity is impressive, yet they all share optimal characteristics. How do you maintain variety while improving quality? You have to be careful not to make all the animals too similar, Taewok said. If they're all exactly the same, they might all get sick from the same disease. So I keep several different family lines and mix them carefully. Genetic diversity for disease resistance, Velthara murmured. We never considered this in our synthetic protein production. They came to a pen where a large sow was nursing 8 piglets. The babies were small and pink, squeaking softly as they fed from their mother. This is the future of my pig breeding program, Taewok said proudly. These little ones have parents who were chosen from the best of the best. When they grow up, they'll be stronger and healthier than any generation before them. Velthara watched the piglets for a long time. Its lights pulsed very slowly, like a heartbeat. They are born naturally? Without technological intervention? Of course, Taewok said. The mother pig knows exactly what to do. She doesn't need any help from machines or computers. My people reproduce through technological processes, Velthara said quietly. We have not experienced natural birth for thousands of years. We forgot that life knows how to create itself. Jeho put a gentle hand on the alien's shoulder. Life is very smart. It has been solving problems for millions of years. Sometimes we just need to watch and learn from it. They visited the chicken coop next. Hundreds of chickens pecked and scratched in the dirt, clucking softly to each other. Some were brown, some were white, and some had colorful feathers. Different chickens for different purposes, Taewok explained. These white ones lay lots of eggs. These brown ones produce good meat. These colorful ones are beautiful and make good mothers. Velthara scanned the chickens and shook its head in amazement. Each variety has been optimized for specific functions, yet they are all the same species. How many generations did this take? Some of these lines go back hundreds of years, Taewok said. Chicken breeding is an old art. My family has only been working with chickens for 50 years, but we built on the work of many farmers before us. Hundreds of years of accumulated knowledge, Velthara whispered. And you pass this knowledge from parent to child? That's how we keep improving, Taewok said. Each generation learns from the previous one and adds their own discoveries. My son already knows more about animals than I did when I was his age. As the sun began to set, they sat on the porch of the farmhouse. Taewok's wife brought them tea and homemade rice cakes. The alien tasted the food carefully and its lights brightened with surprise. This is much more flavorful than our synthetic foods, Velthara said. The complexity of taste is remarkable. Food tastes better when it comes from healthy, happy animals, Taewok said. Animals that live good lives produce better meat, milk, and eggs. Velthara looked out over the peaceful farm as the cattle settled down for the night. My people focus only on efficiency and output. We never considered that the quality of life affects the quality of the product. Happy animals are productive animals, Taewook said. Stressed animals get sick more often and don't grow as well. It's better for everyone when the animals are content. The ambassador's scanner had been quiet for most of the afternoon. Now Velthara put it away completely. I think I understand something now. You don't just breed animals. You partner with them. Exactly, Jeho said. Humans learned long ago that we succeed when we work with nature instead of trying to dominate it. As they prepared to leave, Velthara turned to Taewook. Would you teach me to see animals the way you do? I want to learn how to recognize quality and potential. Taewook smiled and nodded. Come back tomorrow. Bring clothes you don't mind getting dirty. Real learning happens when you work with your hands. The alien's lights pulsed brightly with excitement as they drove back to the city. For the first time in its life, Velthara was beginning to understand what humans meant when they talked about working with life instead of trying to control it. The next week, Jeho took Velthara to meet Hyejin Choi at the National Seed Bank. The building looked like a modern fortress, built to protect its precious contents from any disaster. This is where we keep the future of human food, Hyejin explained as she led them through security doors. Every seed variety we have ever developed is stored here. Velthara followed quietly, wearing the work clothes that Taewook had recommended. The alien had spent 3 days at the farm, learning to feed animals and clean barns. Its once pristine appearance now showed signs of honest work. How many varieties do you store? Velthara asked. Over 50,000 different types of seeds, Hyejin said proudly. Rice, wheat, corn, vegetables, fruits, nuts. Every food plant humans have ever improved. They entered a large room filled with metal shelves reaching up to the ceiling. Each shelf held thousands of small containers, all carefully labeled and organized. These seeds can survive for hundreds of years in here, Hyejin explained. The temperature and humidity are perfectly controlled. If something happened to all the farms in the world, we could restart human agriculture from what's stored in this room. Velthara's lights pulsed slowly as it looked around. You preserve genetic diversity while continuing to improve your crops. This is remarkable planning. We learned from experience, Hyejin said. Sometimes a new disease appears that kills one type of plant. If we only had that one type, everyone would starve. But if we have many different types, some will survive and we can replant. She led them to a special display case. Inside were seeds that looked ancient and rough compared to the smooth, perfect seeds in the storage room. These are heritage seeds, Hyejin said reverently. Some of them are 5,000 years old. They are the ancestors of all our modern crops. Velthara examined the old seeds carefully. They look inferior to your modern varieties. In some ways they are, Hyejin agreed. They produce less food and are harder to grow. But they also have qualities that we might need someday. Some can survive droughts better. Others resist diseases that our modern crops cannot fight. You keep the old ones even though the new ones are better? Velthara asked. We keep them because they might be better for problems we haven't faced yet, Jeho explained. Climate change, new diseases, different growing conditions on other planets. We might need the genetic diversity of these old varieties. They moved to the research greenhouses next door. Inside, Hyejin showed them plants that looked like nothing Velthara had ever seen. These are experimental hybrids, Hyejin said. We cross different varieties to create new ones with the best traits of both parents. She pointed to a row of tomato plants. This variety combines the disease resistance of one parent with the high yield of another parent. The result is a tomato that produces more food and gets sick less often. Velthara scanned the hybrid tomatoes. The genetic combination is stable? The offspring will maintain these traits? Most of them will, Hyejin said. But we test them for several generations to make sure. Some hybrids don't breed true. Their children go back to being like the grandparents. How do you predict which combinations will work? Velthara asked. Experience and careful observation, Hyejin replied. We know which traits tend to stay together and which ones separate. We also know which plants can successfully cross with each other. They walked through rows of experimental vegetables. Some looked normal, others were strange colors or unusual shapes. This purple corn has 3 times more antioxidants than regular corn, Hyejin explained. This white carrot stays fresh longer after harvest. This miniature cabbage can grow in very small spaces. Each variety serves a specific purpose, Velthara observed. Exactly. We don't just make plants bigger or more productive. We solve specific problems, food that lasts longer for space travel, crops that can grow in poor soil. Vegetables that provide better nutrition for people who can't afford many different foods. They stopped at a section where plants were growing under different colored lights and in various types of soil. We also test how well our new varieties adapt to different conditions, Heejin said. A plant that grows well in Korea might not grow well on Mars or in a space station. Velthara's lights flickered with interest. You're already thinking about growing food in space? Of course, Heejin smiled. Humans are explorers. Wherever we go, we need to eat. We're developing crops that can grow in artificial environments with limited resources. She showed them a remarkable sight, tomatoes growing in what looked like red dirt. This soil is similar to what we might find on Mars. These tomatoes have been bred to extract nutrients from poor soil and survive with very little water. My people never considered adapting food production to new environments, Velthara said quietly. We assumed we would always live in controlled conditions where we could synthesize everything we needed. Humans learned to adapt because we had to, Jeho said. Our ancestors spread across Earth by learning to grow food in forests, deserts, mountains, and islands. Each place required different solutions. Hyejin led them to her personal laboratory where she was working on her most ambitious project. Under bright light, strange-looking plants grew in tubes filled with nutrient solution. These are the future, she said excitedly. Plants that can grow without soil using very little water and space. They could feed people on spaceships or underground colonies. Velthara examined the setup carefully. This looks more like our technology. But the plants themselves are still biological? Yes, we use technology to create the perfect growing environment. But we let the plants do what they do best, convert simple chemicals into complex nutrients that living beings can use. You work with biology instead of replacing it, Velthara said. Understanding dawning in its voice, exactly. We learned that biological systems have millions of years of problem-solving built into them. It's smarter to enhance and guide these systems than to try to replace them with machines. Hyejin picked up a tomato from one of the experimental plants. It was perfectly red and smelled incredibly fresh. This tomato has been bred for space travel. It stays fresh for weeks without refrigeration, provides complete nutrition, and the plant produces fruit continuously. She cut the tomato and offered pieces to both visitors. Jeho took a bite and smiled. Velthara hesitated, then carefully tasted the alien food. The ambassador's lights exploded into brilliant patterns. The flavor complexity is extraordinary, and I can sense the nutritional density. This single fruit contains more usable nutrients than a week's worth of our synthetic food. The best part is that the seeds from this tomato will grow more plants exactly like it, Hyejin said. Once you have the seeds, you can grow food forever without any technology except soil, water, and sunlight. Velthara sat down heavily, overwhelmed by the implications. My people spend enormous energy synthesizing food in factories. You create systems that make food using only the energy from your star. Plants are solar-powered food factories, Jeho said. They've been perfecting the process for millions of years. We just help them get better at it. As they toured more of the greenhouse, Velthara began to understand the true scope of human agricultural achievement. Plants that could grow in salt water, fruits that ripened at different times to provide food year-round, grains that could survive floods and droughts. How long did it take to develop all of this? Velthara asked. 10,000 years of human civilization, Hyejin replied. Every generation built on what came before. Every farmer who noticed something new and shared that knowledge with others contributed to what you see here. 10,000 years of patient observation and gradual improvement, Velthara whispered. My people abandoned such long-term thinking when we developed fast technology. Fast isn't always better, Hyejin said gently. Some of our best discoveries came from farmers who spent their whole lives watching one type of plant, learning its secrets. As the day ended, they sat in Hyejin's office surrounded by charts showing crop yields, genetic maps, and climate projections. I want to learn this patience, Velthara said suddenly. I want to understand how to think in generations instead of years. It starts with respect, Hyejin said. Respect for the farmers who came before us, respect for the plants themselves, and respect for the time it takes to create something truly valuable. Velthara nodded slowly. On my world, we lost respect for natural processes when we became powerful enough to ignore them. We thought technology could solve everything faster and better. Technology is a tool, Jeho said, but it works best when it supports natural processes instead of replacing them. The alien looked out the window at the experimental fields where hundreds of different plants were growing under the setting sun. I think I'm beginning to understand why humans succeeded where my people struggled. You never stopped being part of nature. You found ways to work with it instead of against it. That's the most important lesson, Heejin said. The moment you start fighting nature, you've already lost. But when you partner with it, amazing things become possible. Velthara's lights pulsed with new determination. I want to bring this knowledge to my people. But first I need to learn how to see the world the way humans do. Will you teach me to be a farmer? The two humans looked at each other and smiled. Tomorrow, Jeho. 3 months later, Velthara stood in a new kind of laboratory. This one was different from both the sterile Catherian research facilities and the simple human greenhouses. It was a place where advanced alien technology worked, alongside ancient human wisdom. The genetic sequencer is ready, announced Dr. Soman. Park as she calibrated a machine that looked like it belonged on a starship. Velthara, are you sure your people will allow us to use their technology this way? The ambassador, now wearing a mixture of Catherian robes and human work clothes, nodded confidently. The Collective Council approved our joint research project last week. They are very interested in your breeding methods. Jeho carried in a tray of seeds from different rice varieties. Let's start with something simple. We want to create rice that can grow in the salty soil near oceans. Traditional breeding would take 20 years to develop salt-resistant rice, Heejin added as she joined them. But with Catherian genetic analysis, we might be able to do it in 2 years. Velthara placed one of its people's advanced scanners next to the human microscopes. My technology can map every gene in these seeds in minutes, but I have learned that knowing the genes is only the beginning. Over the past months, the alien had spent time with farmers across Korea, learning to feel soil between its fingers, to smell when rain was coming, and to see the subtle signs that showed which plants were healthiest. The ambassador's smooth hands now had calluses, and its pale blue skin had darkened slightly from working in the sun. The Catherian approach was to modify genes directly, Velthara explained as it operated the scanner. We would identify the genes for salt resistance and try to force them into rice plants. But this often failed because we didn't understand how all the genes work together. So Min loaded the first batch of rice seeds into the genetic sequencer. The human approach is to find plants that already have some salt resistance and gradually increase it through breeding, working with what nature already provided, instead of trying to force new capabilities, Jeho said. But now we can combine both approaches. We can use your scanner to identify which plants have the best genetic combinations, then breed those plants together. The machine hummed to life, displaying complex genetic maps on multiple screens. Velthara studied the patterns with new eyes, seeing not just individual genes but the relationships between them. This variety has 3 genes that help with salt tolerance, the ambassador said, pointing to the display. But they are spread across different chromosomes. Traditional breeding might separate them. Not necessarily, Heejin said. Experienced breeders learn to test for multiple traits at once. They might not understand the genetics, but they can recognize plants that have all the qualities they want. But with your scanner, we can be certain, Somin added. We can test seedlings when they're very young and select only the ones with the best genetic combinations. They spent the morning scanning seeds from dozens of rice varieties, building a genetic map of salt tolerance. Velthara's technology could identify useful genes that human scientists had never noticed. Look at this, the alien said excitedly. This old variety from coastal regions has genes I've never seen before. They seem to help the plant process salt water and convert it to fresh water inside the leaves. That variety barely produces any grain, Jeho said. Farmers abandoned it decades ago because it was too low yielding. But if we cross it with a high-yielding variety, Heejin suggested, we might get plants that produce lots of grain and can handle salt water. The genetic patterns suggest this combination should be stable, Velthara agreed. My people would have dismissed the low-yielding variety as useless. We never looked for hidden capabilities in plants that seemed inferior. They began the actual breeding work that afternoon. Using traditional methods, they planted different rice varieties in carefully controlled conditions. But now they also used Catherian technology to monitor the plants constantly. Amazing, Velthara said as it watched seedlings emerge from the soil. Your technology shows me exactly which plants have the genetic combinations we want. but seeing them grow teaches me about their real-world performance. Some plants look perfect on paper but don't actually grow well, Taewook explained. He had joined the project to contribute his knowledge of animal breeding. You have to see how they behave in real conditions. They tested the young plants with salt water. Most died within days, but a few survived and even seemed to thrive. Velthara scanned the survivors eagerly. Remarkable, the ambassador said. These plants not only tolerate salt, they are actually using it to improve their growth. The genetic combinations are even better than we predicted. Nature is full of surprises, Somin said. That's why we test everything in real conditions, not just in computer models. As weeks passed, the collaboration began producing results that amazed everyone. The combination of Catherian analytical power and human breeding. Intuition was creating plants that neither species could have developed alone. This soybean variety can grow in soil that's almost like seawater, Haijin announced as she examined test results. And it produces 40% more protein than regular soybeans. The wheat we developed last month can survive temperatures that would kill normal wheat, Jeho added. It could grow on planets with harsh climates. Velthara had learned to read the subtle signs that farmers use to evaluate plants. The alien could now tell which seedlings would grow into healthy adults just by looking at their leaves and posture. I'm beginning to think like both a Catherian and a human, the ambassador said. I can analyze the genetics, but I can also feel what the plant needs to thrive. That's the breakthrough, Taewook said. You're not just using our methods or your technology. You're creating something new that combines the best of both. The real test came when they tried to develop crops for extreme environments. Using orbital data from Catherian ships, they had information about conditions on planets throughout the galaxy. This planet has very low gravity and high radiation, Velthara said, showing them data from a distant world. My people wanted to establish a colony there but couldn't create food sources that would survive. Let's design crops specifically for those conditions, Somin suggested. We can start with plants that already handle stress well and modify them for the specific challenges. They worked with extreme environment plants from Earth, species that grew near volcanoes, in Arctic conditions and in areas with high radiation. Using Catherian genetic analysis, they identified the genes that provided these capabilities. This moss from Chernobyl has incredible radiation resistance, Velthara observed. And this cactus can survive with almost no water. If we could combine these traits with food production, it's possible, Haijin said, but it will take time and patience. We need to test hundreds of combinations to find one that works. Time and patience, Velthara repeated. 6 months ago, those words would have frustrated me. Now I understand they are the foundation of true progress. The breakthrough came when they successfully created a potato that could grow in high radiation, low gravity, and poor soil while producing nutritious tubers. The plant looked strange. Its leaves were thick and waxy, its stems were unusually strong, and its roots grew in spiral patterns, but it worked. This could feed colonists on dozens of worlds, Velthara said in amazement. And once they have the seeds, they won't need any technology to grow food. That's the beauty of biological solutions, Jeho said. They're self-sustaining. Give someone a machine and they depend on your technology forever. Give them seeds and they can feed themselves anywhere. As their research progressed, word spread through both human and Catherian scientific communities. Other alien species began requesting information about the collaboration. The Andromedans want to learn our breeding methods, Velthara announced one day. Their home system is dying and they need to develop portable food production for their refugee ships. The more species that learn these techniques, the better, Somin said. Knowledge should be shared, not hoarded. But the most important development was in Velthara itself. The ambassador had changed from a detached observer of primitive human methods to a passionate advocate for biological wisdom. I want to return to my homeworld soon, Velthara announced. Not to report on human methods, but to teach them. My people need to remember how to work with life instead of trying to control it. Are you ready for that? Haijin asked gently. Changing an entire civilization's approach to food production won't be easy. Velthara's lights pulsed with quiet confidence. I have learned more than just farming techniques. I have learned to think like a human, to plan for generations, to respect natural processes, and to find strength in patience. Then you're ready to go home, Taewook said. But remember, real change happens slowly. Don't expect immediate results. The alien smiled. an expression it had learned from humans. I have learned that the best things are worth waiting for. My people spent 3,000 years trying to force better food production. I think it's time we tried a different approach. As they prepared for Velthara's departure, the team worked on their final project, a comprehensive guide to biological breeding that combined human wisdom with Catherian technology. It would be the foundation for agricultural revolution. 6 months later, Jeho stood in the same window where he had watched the sunrise on the day Velthara first arrived. Today, he was watching a very different scene. Across the research center grounds, beings from 12 different worlds were learning to plant seeds with their own hands. Dr. Kim called Hee-jin as she approached with a tablet full of reports. The Andromedan delegation has successfully grown their first crop of Earth-adapted grain, and the Centaurian ambassador wants to extend their stay by another month. Jeho smiled as he watched a tall, crystalline being carefully transplant rice seedlings under Tae-wook's patient guidance. Who would have thought that farming would become the galaxy's most popular subject? Velthara started something amazing, So-min said as she joined them at the window. The ambassador's reports to the Catherian collective changed everything. Through the glass, they could see the alien who had started it all. Velthara was working in the fields with a group of young Catherian scientists, teaching them to feel soil texture and recognize healthy plants. The ambassador's blue skin was now permanently darkened from months of sun exposure, and its movements had the confident rhythm of an experienced farmer. The transformation in Velthara is remarkable, Jeho observed. From a sterile laboratory scientist to a true agricultural leader. The change in the Catherian collective is even more remarkable, Hee-jin added. They've converted half their food synthesis facilities into biological growing centers. A communication device on Jeho's desk chirped with an incoming message. The holographic image of a Catherian council member appeared, speaking in their musical language. Velthara had taught the humans to understand basic Catherian, but they still needed translation for formal communications. The council reports another breakthrough, Velthara translated as it entered the office. The new grain varieties are producing 300% more nutrition than our synthetic alternatives, while requiring 90% less energy to grow. And the taste? So-min asked with a grin. Velthara's lights danced with what the humans had learned was alien laughter. The council admits that they had forgotten food could have flavor. Some of them are eating purely for pleasure now, not just nutrition. That's what happens when you switch from synthetic proteins to real food, Tae-wook said, as he came in from the fields. Food becomes enjoyable instead of just fuel. The transformation hadn't been limited to the Catherians. Word of the agricultural revolution had spread throughout the galaxy, faster than anyone expected. Species that had struggled with food production for centuries were sending delegations to Earth to learn the ancient human arts of breeding and farming. The Aquatic Coalition wants to establish a permanent research station here, Velthara announced. They've never successfully grown land plants, but their ocean farming techniques could revolutionize human aquaculture. Exchange of knowledge, Jeho said approvingly. That's how real progress happens. The past months had seen an unprecedented collaboration between species. Human farmers worked alongside crystal-based beings who understood mineral absorption. Gaseous aliens taught humans about atmospheric interactions with plants. Water-dwelling species shared their knowledge of nutrient circulation. The diversity of approaches is incredible, Hee-jin said as she reviewed the research data. Each species brings a different perspective on biological systems. But they all learn the same fundamental lesson, Velthara added. Patience and observation achieve more than force and technology. A gentle chime indicated an incoming planetary communication. The main screen in the office lit up with a transmission from the Catherian homeworld. The image showed vast agricultural complexes where Catherians in work clothes tended to fields of Earth-origin crops adapted for their planet's conditions. The harvest season has begun, announced the Catherian on the screen. For the first time in 3 millennia, our people are eating food that grew from soil instead of laboratories. The camera panned across fields where thousands of Catherians were harvesting grain by hand, their lights pulsing with joy as they touched real plants for the first time in their lives. They look so happy, So-min observed. They've rediscovered something their species lost long ago, Velthara explained. The connection between intelligent beings and the natural world. Technology made us powerful, but it also made us isolated from life itself. The transmission continued with reports from other Cytherian colonies. Worlds that had been dependent on food shipments from the homeworld were now growing their own crops. Planets that had been considered uninhabitable were being transformed into agricultural centers. The economic impact is extraordinary, the Cytherian reporter continued. Energy previously used for food synthesis is now available for other purposes. Our entire civilization is becoming more efficient and sustainable. But the most significant change was cultural. Young Cytherians were choosing careers in agriculture over advanced technology. Families were moving from cities to farming communities. The species that had embraced pure technology was rediscovering the satisfaction of working with living systems. My nephew just graduated from the new agricultural University on Cytheria Prime, Velthera said proudly. He wants to specialize in interspecies crop development. The next generation will grow up understanding both approaches, Jeho said. They'll be able to use advanced technology to support biological systems instead of replacing them. The changes weren't limited to the Cytherians. Reports were coming in from across the galaxy of species, abandoning purely synthetic food production in favor of biological agriculture. The revolution had become a galactic movement. The Mechanical Collective has requested our breeding manual, Yejin announced, reading from her tablet. They want to develop biological food production for their organic auxiliary populations, even the machine. Species are recognizing the value of biological systems, Taewok said with amazement. A soft knock on the door interrupted their discussion. A young human woman entered, wearing clothes that mixed earth fabrics with alien materials. Dr. Kim, the shuttle is ready for departure to the Centauri system, she announced. The seeds and breeding equipment are loaded and the agricultural team is prepared for the 6-month mission. This was the latest development in the agricultural revolution. Human experts were traveling to alien worlds to establish farming programs, while alien specialists came to Earth to learn advanced techniques. The exchange was creating a truly galactic agricultural network. How many off-world missions do we have active now? Jeho asked. 47, the assistant replied, and we have requests for 93 more. The demand for agricultural expertise is exceeding our ability to supply teachers. We need to train more instructors, So-min said, but we have to be careful to maintain quality. Agricultural knowledge can't be rushed. That's why we're establishing regional training centers, Velthera explained. Expert farmers from each species will learn our methods and then teach others in their own regions. The plan was ambitious but necessary. Rather than trying to send human teachers to every world that requested help, they would create a network of local experts who understood both human techniques and their own species-specific needs. The beautiful thing is that each species will adapt our methods to their unique circumstances, Heejin said. They'll develop new techniques that we can learn from in return. As the day progressed, they received updates from training centers across the galaxy. Crystalline beings had developed new methods for mineral-rich soil enhancement. Gaseous species had created atmospheric growing techniques that increased crop yields. Aquatic aliens had perfected underwater agriculture that could feed entire ocean worlds. Every species is contributing something unique, Velthara observed. Humans provided the foundation, but the galaxy is building the future together. The transformation was becoming self-sustaining. Species that learned human agricultural techniques were improving them and sharing the improvements with others. Knowledge was flowing in all directions, creating innovations that no single species could have achieved alone. I have an announcement, Velthara said as the team gathered for their evening meal. The Galactic Council has officially recognized Earth as the agricultural center of the galaxy. They want to establish a permanent embassy here for food production research. The humans looked at each other in amazement. 6 months ago, most alien species had considered Earth a backward world with primitive technology. Now it was recognized as the source of the most important knowledge in the galaxy. But more importantly, Velthara continued, they want to formalize the exchange program. Students from every member species will come to Earth to learn agricultural basics before returning to develop their own farming programs. Earth University Galactic Campus, Taewok said with a laugh. My grandfather would never believe that his little farm would become part of a cosmic education system. As night fell, they walked through the research grounds where beings from dozens of worlds were still working in the fields. Bioluminescent aliens provided natural lighting for night work. Nocturnal species tended crops under the stars. The fields never stopped producing. Look at what you started, Jeho said to Velthera as they watched the peaceful scene. No, the ambassador replied. Look at what we accomplished together.